Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation by Dave Sanderson. Just a reminder, when he brings up his presentation, you can make it full screen. And we're going to leave the questions for the end, so you can put them in the chat, or you can wait till we all come back on and ask them then. We'll have a Q&A afterwards. So, without further ado, about Dave Sanderson. After nearly 35 years in sales and sales leadership with roles in companies such as ADP, PeopleSoft, KPMG, and Oracle, Dave founded his executive coaching and personal leadership firm, Dave Sanderson Speaks International, in January of 2014. He works with established and emerging leaders to help them find their distinct advantage, aligning with their purpose through employing their personal leadership skills, igniting their performance through focused execution, resourcefulness, and gratitude. On January 15, 2009, Dave was one of the last passengers off the plane that crashed into the Hudson River, best known as the Miracle on the Hudson, considered to be the most successful ditching in aviation history. I think we all remember that. Dave has recently been named one of the top 100 leadership speakers in Inc.com. He has spoken at countless fundraisers and continues to donate his speaker series to the organization as an expression of gratitude for the care he received from the first person he saw after he was rescued and transferred to land in New Jersey, a Red Cross volunteer with a blanket. His book, Moments Matter, details the lessons learned from the Miracle on the Hudson and how one defining moment can create a lifetime of purpose, so you can create your own flight plan for your future. So without further ado, take it, Dave.
Well, thank you very much, Nina, for a nice introduction. And it's always nice to be back with my friends from Northern New Jersey. It's like my second home. People laugh when I say that, but I tell people they don't understand the people in New Jersey. Once you're there, people take care of you. So first, thank you for having me today. And if you want to go off screen to help your bandwidth, especially Robert, I know you say you had some bandwidth issues. No worries. I'll take the ball and run with it at this point in time. And hopefully we'll be able to share some ideas later about the leadership, some other ideas about how to grow out of traumatic life experiences. So it'll help as we all go into 2021. With that said, let me, all right, Nina, here's the test. Let's make sure that we can share the screen. We're going to open up a little bit with just a little video to take you back to that day so we can go forward and not have to spend a lot of time going back and recreating that day. Take care. Back.
When Dave Sanderson was here 5 years ago, he was in the Hudson River. After helping others, he was the last passenger to get off Flight 1549.
I looked around, there's nothing on the lifeboat. I jumped in the water and swam to the closest boat I could find.
Sanderson was seated in this row, seat 15A.
When you think you're going to die, and all the things start flashing through your minds, and your family, Little League Baseball, everything just sort of like a movie. And then you put your head down and it's like, okay, this is it. But then all of a sudden you hit and you go back and all of a sudden you see light come through the window and it's like, man, I got a shot. So they had 3 people waiting for me, specifically at the dock. They had 2 EMTs and a guy from the American Red Cross.
Red Cross blankets warmed and comforted Sanderson and the other passengers.
That blanket's sort of my symbol for me that day, it was about the team. It was about the first responders. It was a whole team effort, not with just the passengers and crew.
It was about 60 seconds after we took off when I heard the explosion.
In his spare time, he's helped raise over $7 million for the Red Cross.
I'm so grateful to have another chance. I have another chance to be able to do not only what I want to do, but be with my family and impact somebody's life, and I think that's my mission.
Every day is a miracle if you choose to see it that way.
I'm really proud of a dear, dear friend of mine by the name of Dave Sanderson. Every one of us got a hero inside. Every one of us has a capacity to find our strength. it's nice to see a miracle on the Hudson and know that part of that miracle is a dear friend, even when he could barely function, made sure other people's lives were being saved and supported.
The meaning you attach to something produces the emotion of your life. Meaning informs your emotional state. You can build a ladder of positive and empowering meanings and effectively change the direction of your life. You can choose to grow. Your relationships, careers, all this will expand in your life, and all of a sudden you start living the purpose of your life.
First, thank you again, Nina, for inviting me to be here today. I'm always honored to not only speak, but also especially with folks in northern New Jersey, where like I've mentioned, it's my second home. Throughout our lives, many of us will be tested by a traumatic life experience. These midlife jolts can either propel us or they can derail us, taking us back to square one. These jolts can create a lifetime of purpose, create new relationships, new careers, new worldviews, and a clarity of your mission on earth. That jolt came to me on January 15th, 2009, when I survived the plane crash known as the Miracle on the Hudson. For the next 25 minutes, I'm going to share with you by equipping yourself with focused execution and empowering yourself with resourcefulness and transforming yourself with gratitude. You'll find what I call your distinct advantage, what you're uniquely gifted for and most passionate about. And once you find that, you'll realize what I call your pitch, your point in time that changes everything for you. Before we start, I just want to ask a question. I'm sure some of you here have seen that movie, Sully, and I thought Clint Eastwood did a fantastic job, and Tom Hanks was amazing. And I was very honored and humbled to be a very small part of that experience. But one thing that all the passengers knew then, and we all know now, is this: that movie was not about the plane crash. It was about the journey of the captain, and the crew did a fabulous job that day, and I will be forever grateful. But now, let me tell you my story. Let me take you inside a miracle. January 15th, 2009 was a Thursday. That week started for me on Tuesday in Sarasota, Florida. And on Wednesday, we were working in a manufacturing plant in Petersburg, Virginia. Late that afternoon, we loaded up and headed north to New York City because the next day we were going to be working in a distribution center in Brooklyn. Now, like most people, I work over so much. I have the opportunity to go and be there early. We take advantage of being there early. So that plant opened up at 2 o'clock in the morning. So our day started about 5. We got done about 10. Now, I travel over 100,000 miles a year, what I do at my job. So any chance to get home to my wife and 4 kids a little early, I usually try to take advantage of that. So about 10 o'clock that morning, I called our travel agent, worked with her, and she put me on flight 1549. I gave up a first class seat at 5 o'clock for seat 15A on flight 1549 on January 15th, 2009. So I think there's something with the number 15 with me. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that one out. I got to the airport in LaGuardia a little early, and all the planes were delayed that day. It was 11 degrees and snowing. As you know, that's not that big of a deal. Planes are always backed up on LaGuardia. I'm sure most of you have flown out of LaGuardia, and they're always backed up. That's no big deal. And I was, excuse me, one of the first set of passengers to board the plane that day because of my status with U.S. Airways. I was a chairman. I was top tier. So I went back to my seat. This was seat 15A. It's 4 rows behind that left wing. And I did exactly what I did every single time when I got on a plane then. And I hallucinate what you do when you get on a plane now. I went back to my seat, put my briefcase down, I put my wallet briefcase, pulled the magazine out, and I started to read. I did not listen to the flight crew. I did not know where those exits were. I did not read that little brochure they always tell you to read. But I guarantee you, every single time I get on a plane now, I do. Because now I know how important it is to be aware on a plane. And I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have flown out of LaGuardia. And as you know, the runway goes out into the bay, and it goes out, and all the planes start heading north. That's a traditional takeoff, because at that point they get out of airspace and they can start making their turns. No big deal about the takeoff. About 60 seconds after we took off, that's when I heard the explosion. And it was a loud explosion. I had never heard anything on a plane like that before, so it definitely got my attention. So I looked up, and I looked out the window, and I saw fire coming out from the left wing. So I knew something had happened. My fly so also, the plane lost an engine. No big deal. Really, it startled me too much at that moment. See, that's where I think God's grace entered for the first moment of this flight, because no one on the plane knew at that moment in time what happened on the left side of the plane also happened on the right side of the plane. And I truly believe they were cross-referenced or checked in. Hey, what'd you see? Hey, what'd you hear? There could have been a lot of panic. People panic, people start to lose their heads. When people start to lose their heads, they start making irrational decisions. To this day, 11 years later, the one thing that stays with me, and I bet if you talk to any passenger on that plane, they'll tell you the same thing. It was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. The guy next to me elbowed me and said, "Hey man, what's going on?" I said, "I think we're going back to the airport." I felt us banking. I saw someone going back to the airport. Excuse me. But as we were banking, I looked out the window, and all of a sudden I saw something I'd never seen before. I saw the skyline of Manhattan up close and personal. I looked out a little further, and all of a sudden I see this bridge coming up. I'm like, I've never seen that one before. And as we started approaching the bridges, when I heard the only words I heard the entire time on this plane, when I heard it, "This is your captain. Brace for impact." That one got my attention. Now I'm fully engaged. Now I know it's serious, because you living that area, you already know this. But when I talk to people around the world, they don't have any understanding about the bridge. The George Washington Bridge is 600 feet up. The plane at that point was roughly 1,000 feet and declining. So we only cleared the bridge at George Washington by roughly 400 feet. So as we were crossing over the bridge, and I looked out the window, you can see people's faces looking up. That's how close we were to the bridge. And as we started crossing over the bridge, I did two things. First thing I did is I prayed. I prayed, whoever that dude is up front, man, just get me down in one piece. Get me down. Second thing I prayed for is the last person I spoke with, who is my client in Brooklyn. Call my wife. Tell her I love her. The third thing is I prayed to God to forgive my sins. I don't want anything between me and God at this point. We're going down. I want to go up, and it's not looking good for me. Second thing I did is I reached down in my briefcase, got my wallet out, and shoved it down into my pants. Because if something did happen, which looked like it was probably going to happen, at least someone could claim my body. At least someone would know who I was. And I put my head down. You know, I do a lot of interviews, and one of the questions I traditionally get is, what's that last moment like? And you're 1 minute away from potential death. What's it like? I told people, I said, what I remember on the plane is I heard some people calling their loved ones. I heard some people texting. But for me, the movie of my life passed before my eyes. I saw things with such clarity that I hadn't seen in 40 or 50 years. Playing Little League baseball, playing football in high school, the prom, my first date with my wife, my kids were born. I saw things in my life I hadn't seen in years. It was with such clarity. And also I'm thinking, this is my life. I now know what my life was made up of. It's a very weird feeling. And as we started descending, it was about 60 seconds after we crossed over the bridge. So we crashed into the river. And it was a hard hit. When we hit, I went all the way back to my seat and all the way up my seat, just like that. When I came back up, I looked up and I looked out the window and I saw a light. So I knew I had a shot, but I wasn't out yet. Because you saw how that plane landed, the back of the plane hit hard, and all of a sudden, water started coming in immediately, depending what part of the plane you were in. And I was towards the back of the plane. Water was anywhere from ankle, knee to waist deep, just like that. Now, you've probably seen that picture of all these people standing on the wings. That was like the first picture that went out immediately. And people often ask me, they say, well, how did those people get out there so quickly? I'm going to tell you what happened. When I turned back in and looked inside the plane, all of a sudden I saw people jumping up on top of seats, walking down the seats to get out of the plane. That's how many people got out. And that became a great metaphor for me, a great lesson for me in my life, because I realized at that point, when you may think you only have one way to get something done, if you open your eyes, stay awake, and become very resourceful, multiple options, multiple choices open up for you. It's a great metaphor for my life. It's helped me tremendously. But I didn't think about getting on top of the seat. My game plan was aisle up, out, aisle up, out. I kept saying aisle up, out, aisle up, out. But when I got to the aisle, something happened that changed that day for me, but changed the entire direction of my life. My mom kicked into my head. My mom passed away in 1997, but there was something she would tell me when I was a child that popped into my head. And it was, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And the right thing for me was, you take care of other people first. I grew up in small towns outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, and in a place called Winchester, Virginia. And, you know, places I grew up, I always had a group of guys I was hung with. And we always had each other's backs. Good or bad, we had each other's backs. So instead of going out, I made a quick decision. I started climbing over the seats to go towards the back of the plane. Now, when I got to the back of the plane, things were moving pretty quick. So I got behind everybody else and started making my way out just like everybody else. And the back of the plane, water was somewhere between about waist and chest level deep. It was pretty deep. And based on that impact, some of those bins are now broken open and luggage is out. And so now you got luggage floating in the water. So you're trying to make your way out. And the first light that I saw was on the right side of the plane at 10F. And I'm like, I'm out of here. So I started getting out on 10F. I looked out and I saw an amazing sight. There was no room on the wing for me. There was no room on that boat for me. But it was an amazing sight because people were already being rescued. Now, I don't know who said this, and I always give them 100% of the credit when they say that the crew got everybody down that day and the crew and passengers got everybody out that day, but the real heroes were the first responders. And the first of the first responders was the New York waterways, the ferries. They were there about 2 minutes after his plane crashed. There's a lot of ways to describe a miracle. But having someone there to rescue you after a plane crash in ice cold water in just a couple minutes, that's the start of a miracle. Now, if you look at this picture closely, you notice I'm holding on to a lifeboat. And the reason why is this. You probably know this, but people around the world don't. The Hudson River's got a very fast current. That plane actually floated down the river about a half a mile in 24 minutes. So as that plane was floating down the river, that little lifeboat was floating out into the river. And they, like I and probably you, who reads the instructions? There's no one who reads the instructions. It's actually tethered to the plane, but they didn't know that. So they kept screaming me, hold on. And that's why you see me hold on to the lifeboat, waist deep in 36-degree water for about 7 minutes. But then it turned out I saw something on the wing. It caught my eye. And it was a lady, and she was just standing there. She was stifled. She was frozen. And you've probably been in either business situations or personal situations where you get somebody who just doesn't know what to do, so they just stay there. They don't know what to do, so they're stifled. And in situations like this, that could be a very dangerous situation because she's not moving. And all the training that I've had in my life is, if you ever see somebody in that situation, you got to do something radical to break them out of it. You just got to do something crazy. So I started just yelling at this lady, and she's looking at me like, why is this old man yelling at me? But all of a sudden I got her attention, and somebody on that lifeboat reached up and grabbed her arm and pulled her on the lifeboat. And all of a sudden you see people walking down a wing, but I'm still in the plane. And things were happening very quickly. And a couple of minutes later, I felt the plane shift, and I didn't know what happened until later. I found out one of the boats in the rescue was a tugboat. As he was backing out, touched the front of the plane. When it touched the front of the plane, it shook the plane. When it shook the plane, I felt water go up my backside. I'm like, Titanic, this thing's going down. Man, you gotta get out of here. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you don't want to like the Titanic. You remember that movie when that boat tipped up, it sucked everything down in it. My thought was, do not be sucked down in a plane. You're almost out of here. Do not be sucked down in a plane. So I stopped there. I think my mom and my dad. They didn't give me swimming lessons when I was a child. I mean, never been able to get off this plane. And that was one of the greatest learning experiences again, because I started thinking about that moment a few years ago, and it reminded me of a time when I was in Boy Scouts. Now, I don't know anybody here has been in Boy Scouts, but I was in Boy Scouts and loved Boy Scouts. And I was going for an award or recognition called the Order of the Arrow. It's a camping and orienteering award. It's where your dad drops you off on a Friday, says, I'll see you in a couple of days. You're with a bunch of guys you don't know. And it's like Survivor on steroids, because you got to do all these activities. They give you a log. You got to whittle it down to the shape of an arrow to present it when you get on. It's a very intense experience. But one of the things we had to do during that experience is we had to get across the river to get to the next activity. Now, yes, we could have walked down the bank, and there was a bridge to go across the river. But we were 12 years old, and we just wanted to get across, and we jumped in and swam across the river. And I started thinking, was at the moment when I was 12 years old. Those gave me the certainty at that moment to do what I had to do. Because as soon as I felt that plane shift, I'm like, I'm out of here. So I jumped in and swam to the closest boat that I could find, have me in that wing. That was the longest 10-yard swim in my life. Because not only was it 36-degree water, and I was fully clothed, but there's jet fuel in the water. And that's why today you see me wearing glasses. Because that night I had a little haze in my eye. When I got back and went to the optometrist, they found black spots in one of my eyes. And they think it may have been the jet fuel got stuck in my eye during that swim. But I got there. Now I'm inside the ferry and you're climb, yet can't. Then I heard my mom again, because the word my mom hated most in life was the word can't. If you grew up in my house and you said, I can't to my mom, she said, if you can't do it, you're going to do it. And I figured out after she passed away that her worldview in life was if you can't, you must. She would not accept the word can't. So you got one arm up, I felt somebody grab it. Got the other arm up, I felt somebody grab it. To this day, I do not know who these two gentlemen are, but they pulled me on this ferry, threw me over the side. Now I'm sliding on the ice in the ferry. I didn't know what's going on now. Now yelling, get up, get up, get up. And I got to the side of the ferry, I'm like, I made it. I made it. But I didn't, because that was my moment. See, one of the groups I love to speak for the most are for law enforcement and firefighters. They get it. You may have seen these firefighters, especially lately with these wildfires out west. They're going into the fire, man, they got it going on. They got the adrenaline going. But when you see the next picture of them, they're sitting on the curb with their equipment. They got nothing left. I had nothing left. Because as soon as I stood up, I let my adrenaline go. And I was so cold. It's hard to explain how cold it is when you've been in the water for over 7 minutes in 36-degree water and 11-degree air temperature. I could barely breathe. It's amazing where people are in times of a crisis. Because there was a guy on this ferry, he had a gray suit on, he has laptop over his back, but most importantly, he was dry. But what did he have? He had an iPhone. He walked up to me and said, call your wife. And I couldn't dial the phone, but I could get the number out. And if iOS 14 is working right now, and we're going to find out because sometimes it doesn't, you're going to hear what was said that day from the ferry while all this was going down.
It's your dad. I was in a plane crash.
That's all I could get out. This is your dad. I've been in a plane crash. Now, my wife's not home waiting for me to give her a blow by blow of my life. She's actually has a job, but she was taking her son to basketball practice while this was going down. So my daughter, who then was a junior in high school, got that message, turned the TV on, saw this breaking loose. And that's how my family found out I'd been in a plane crash. Now, most of you already know the geography, but I'm going to do it anyway because I love doing geography. Because this picture tells you exactly where everything was going down. So you look in the middle of the picture, you see the Empire State Building. Left of that, right's Manhattan. So over there is the New York side. The other side is the New Jersey side. And 6 years ago, I had the honor and privilege of speaking in New Orleans with one of the people who wrote the plan for maritime rescues in the Hudson. He and I did a plan execution talk in New Orleans for 2 hours. I learned so much that day about what really happened. But one of the things I learned was pretty basic. Wherever closest point to shore you were is where you're going to go. So if you see how this plane is situated, the left side of the plane is facing towards Manhattan. The right side of the plane is facing towards New Jersey. I'm heading to Jersey. So when we got to shore, they already radioed ahead because they knew I'd been in the water. So when we hit shore, there were 3 people waiting for me. There were 2 EMTs, and a guy from the American Red Cross with a blanket. That's why I now speak nationally on behalf of the American Red Cross. Because a little known fact about that day is this, what you would not get in the media. This is bonus information. There were a lot of groups that touched a lot of people that day. But there were 2 groups that touched every one of us. The ferries, the waterways, and the Red Cross are both New York and New Jersey side. And that's the moment where my miracle starts to turn into my mission. And I'm just going to end up and share with you, how does a miracle turn into somebody's mission? And then how is that mission realized? The Sunday after the plane crash, I went to my church. Now that Sunday, everybody wanted to talk to me. But there was one guy who really wanted to talk to me. He was in charge of men's breakfast. And he came up to me and said, Dave, will you speak at men's breakfast next Sunday? I said, no problem, man. 50 old guys eating pancakes, I got it. No problem. Walk in the park. I didn't know they invited half of Charlotte. 500-600 people show up, and they ran out of pancakes. Now I have hungry, angry Methodists. I don't know if anybody here's a Methodist. I am. You might, it might be all right for Presbyterians or Baptists or Episcopalians. You can run out of food, but if you're a Methodist, you promise food, you better have food. So now I'm hungry, angry Methodist. Now our gym's set up in a gym and a stage. That's how our church gym's set up. So I go behind the curtain and behind the door, excuse me, of the stage. I said, God, give me something to say, man. Give it to me now. Deliver. And he gave me something to say. Don't even know what I said that day. I get done speaking. I look in the back of the room. There's this elderly lady just looking at me, eyeing me. She catches my eye, so she starts making her way up here on the left. Comes up, and I'm having a conversation with two men. One was from Bank of America, one was from Wachovia. That's no big deal. But she interrupts this conversation I'm having with these two gentlemen and grabs my arm really tight. I'm like, whoa, what's this old lady going to do to me? She's like grabbing me, right? But all of a sudden, she looked me in the eye and said something that only changed that day, but changed the entire direction of my life. She looked at me and said, I was questioning if there really is a God. I don't believe in miracles. But you are physical evidence that there is a God, and he does miracles. Thank you. Thank you. She let my arm go, looked me in the eye one more time, walks away. I look at these two men. I've never seen two men cry like this in my life. My minister was behind me watching this, witnessing all this. And I'm like looking at him like, what just happened? That's the moment I realized what happened to me on January 15, 2009 had now impacted somebody before she goes to her grave beyond wherever that may be. Now believes there is a God who does miracles because I am physical evidence. And friends, that was the moment I realized I found my distinct advantage, what I was uniquely gifted at and most passionate about. Now it's the point in time to change everything for me. That moment's the one that changed everything for me. But one thing you realize in life is this: is success leaves clues. And all these things that you go on through our lives mean something. Because if you go back to 2009, there wasn't a lot of positive things happening. But all of a sudden you had a crew of passengers that did something that never had been done in the history of aviation. One team, one goal, one miracle. And it gave people hope. There's a passage in the Bible that says suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, character produces hope. And hope does not disappoint us. That's not only happened that day. I get to do it every single day. That's what we all get to do every single moment, every day. Because right now, especially this year, what I'm realizing after I talk to so many people is a lack of certainty and a lack of people seeing hope. This is what we're all here for do now, is help other people get hope so they can see a future. They can see how to grow out of this thing called a traumatic life experience, like I did through this plane crash. This is my mission right now. As I mentioned, success leaves clues. And I think everything starts with personal leadership. And now I'm just going to end up and share with you a few things that I've learned through my experiences with my mentors, going back from 1984 to my time with Tony Robbins during the plane, after the plane crash. And hopefully you can at least take one or two of these away and you can implement them right now, because if you learn these personal leadership skills, because it all starts with leading yourself first. First thing is process saves lives. Now, it may not be your physical life like it was mine that day. It might be your financial life. It might be your relationship life. It might be your spiritual life. But if you don't have a game plan, if you don't have a process, this is what people are challenged with right now. When this thing started back in the March timeframe, no one had a process. They didn't know what was going to happen. It was total uncertainty. But the people who did have a process, a game plan, a blueprint, are the ones that are succeeding. You have to have a process, because process will save your life. Second, casualness leads to casualties. What does this mean? Well, last year, now it'll be 2 years ago in April, I had the high honor and privilege of keynoting at NASA. Now, from a kid who grew up in the 60s, space was everything. I love space. I loved astronauts. I want to be an astronaut. So this is one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. And one of the ways they paid me is they gave me 30 minutes with a rocket scientist from the Columbia Space Shuttle team. And he and I went behind closed doors, and he showed me the remains of Columbia. And we had an amazing talk. And he told me about that experience of Columbia and how the tragedy of that. And we contrasted that with U.S. Airways 1549. And we were going back and forth. But he said something that just shocked me and really woke me up. He said, if it wasn't for Apollo 1, if you go back to Apollo 1 in 1967, that's the one when the 3 astronauts unfortunately died before they took off. He says, we don't get to the moon. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you got to remember, everybody loved us. Mercury and Gemini went almost flawlessly. We were getting more money we knew what to do with. People loved space. We got casual. And that's what happened. He said, if we didn't have that happen, we may have not ever got to the moon because we might have been casual the whole time. He said, that was what woke us up. He said, we got casual again during the space shuttles. He said, casualness leads to casualties. And I'm thinking, not only in that situation, but just think of in our lives. Think of relationships. Think if you get casual with a relationship, it can die very quickly. Just think financially. If you're casual with your money, it can go sideways very quickly. A leadership trait is casualness leads to casualties. Third, people of value people. Great leaders are people of value. And I think one of the greatest teachers in the history of the world is a gentleman named Jesus Christ, and you can believe whatever you want to believe. But one of the things that Jesus did is Jesus valued people. See, Jesus didn't hang out with the cool kids. Jesus hung out with sinners. He was a person of value. He valued everybody. And great leaders value people. Next, the main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing. I learned this when I had the opportunity to escort a gentleman named General Norman Schwarzkopf. Remember Schwarzkopf? He was the general who led the first Iraq War victory in record time. And I asked him a question. I said, how did you win the war so quickly? And he gave me the answer. He said that every day he would go into the theater and his troops would come to him with problems. Women had to cover their faces. Women couldn't drive tanks. They had to pray 5 times a day. And he kept reminding his troops, how does this contribute to kicking Saddam out of Kuwait? He said he had to keep the main thing, the mission, on top of their minds. And that was a great leadership lesson for me, because great leaders will keep the main thing the main thing. Next, great leaders let go of needing to be right and do the right thing. I learned this inside the plane. One of the things I learned inside the plane is, there are people who stepped up and led, but sometimes part of leadership is this, is you got to know sometimes other people have a better skill set than you do. And when you need to step back and let them do the right thing. And that was a great learning experience for me. And one of the things I really practice now, because one of the things I believe what's going on in this country, there's so many people, I don't care what you believe, are dug in. They have to be right. And this whole country is going sideways because people just need to be right, and it's so divided because people are not focused on doing the right thing. Great leaders let go of needing to do the right thing. Great leaders also divorce limitation, but they're bonded to the truth of capacity. You never hear a great leader talk about limitations. They always talk about the ability to think bigger, the resourcefulness. How can they get things accomplished instead of I can't, or I don't know how I'm going to do it. Great leaders divorce the story of limitation and they marry the truth of unlimited capacity. Leaders are expected to mentor somebody. I was very fortunate to have a mentor who came to me in 1984 for 14 years, mentored me and taught me great things and left me his legacy. And that's my mission right now. That's my new book is about. It's about those lessons that he taught me and how he taught me. Because we're all expected of your leader to mentor somebody else, to leave it behind. Do not let it die with you. And that's what my book's about, because I promised him before he passed away that I would not let it die with me. And this is one of the things about it. We're all expected to mentor somebody else. 5 plus 15 is better than 15 plus 5. What does that mean? This is the difference of being a leader and a manager. Because managers will spend 15 minutes to tell you what they want, how they want it done, give you every step, and then give you 5 minutes to ask them questions. But leaders will take 5 minutes to take exactly what they want accomplished and let you come to them for 15 minutes and ask questions to figure it out yourself. And that's a great distinction between leaders and managers. 15 plus 5 is better. 5 plus 15 is better than 15 plus 5. And last but not least, grace is fueled by gratitude. See, one of the things I believe is, gratitude. What is gratitude? Gratitude is giving thanks to something bigger than yourself. And that's the season we're in right now. It's a season of gratitude. Even through this year that we've had, all of us, if we give gratitude, more grace comes upon us. And I truly believe this. It's happened in my life. Every day is focused on giving gratitude to other people, giving gratitude to something bigger than me. And I'm very blessed that grace has come on to me. And I think one of the great leadership lessons for you is this: give gratitude, because more grace will come your way. I'll leave you with this. For 1,000 years, there was a group of people that were in a land of not enough. But all of a sudden, a leader stepped up and came into that land and delivered those people from a land of not enough to a land of just enough. And for 40 years, they spent this in the land of just enough for 40 years until a group of leaders started believing something bigger than themselves, giving gratitude, started executing. And all of a sudden, he delivered them from a land of just enough to a land of more than enough. My wish for you today is this, coming into this season, this holiday season: take people, the people you're with, from a land of just enough, where they're at, to a land of more than enough, by equipping yourself with focused execution, empowering yourself with resourcefulness, but most importantly, transforming yourself with gratitude, so you can create the flight plan you're meant to be for your life, create your own flight plan, and become the servant leader you're meant to be. I want to say thank you to Nina for having me. I'm sorry if I went over a little bit, but I get going and I appreciate it. So if there's any questions, thoughts, comments,
Yeah,
now's the time to ask.
everyone put their mics on.
Thank you so
and
much.
Let's go through some questions that people have posted. So Amy has put in the chat, what and how did you change the direction of your business and fundraise? So what, you went from, it sounded like working for large companies. So what was your path to what you're doing now in terms of, I guess, Amy, if you want to chime in, I'm not sure exactly what you're thinking here, but, and then she also asked how and what did you reset your strategy besides having gratitude?
Yeah. Well, so the answer to the question is this. As you saw in the little video, I was head of security for a guy by the name of Tony Robbins. And I don't know if anybody knows who Tony Robbins is, but I had the opportunity to be with him for 10 years. He'd been head of security. So he mentored me. So he's the only one who called me that night at Palisades Medical Center. My company didn't call me. He did. And he told me once this thing settled down, when I'm in California, come meet with him, and he's going to sort of give me the 411 on what to expect. So he and I met when I was in Los Angeles for a few hours, and he just kept telling me, now is the time. You got to go out. You can impact people's lives right now. You got to stop working for somebody else and work for yourself. And he sort of implored me to do that, but I had a problem. It's called a wife who has one is certainty, called a job, income, and benefits. So I had to figure that strategy out. But once I figured that strategy out and to give her total certainty in my world of uncertainty, that was the moment I was able to flip it in 2014. It took me a few years, but then I started shifting everything because I started out, just speaking, but I also wanted to give back. And that's why I always talk about gratitude, because I started giving back to the Red Cross because they were there that day. But what that happened was this is how it sort of helped me develop my business strategy. One of the things I'm being able to do this with the Red Cross, I've spoken over, I think, 180 times with the Red Cross around North America. I was able to meet many business leaders. And business leaders, they could pick up the phone and call and talk to them if they needed something, or they call me if they needed something, and I could get in their heads and find out what the vibe was in their company. And I could go in and help them with their leadership and personal leadership and strategies. Because I've been in sales for 30-some years. I had that going for me. I was head of security for Tony, so I had that going for me. So that's how I really developed the business strategy, is because I did it through gratitude with the Red Cross. I had the opportunity to meet so many people and open up many avenues. That's how it happened.
Okay. Amy, anything else?
Did you have a mentor while going transaction? How did you get their guidance?
Well, that's what my book's about, because in 1984, I was fortunate to have a mentor that came into my life who didn't even know who he was. Mm-hmm. I was a second assistant restaurant manager at a place called Howard Johnson. All right, I remember Howard Johnson, Hojo's. That means I worked second and third shift. So I was in the low band on a totem pole. But every night, weeknight, there was a couple that would come in. His name was Bonnie and Bill. He drove a pickup truck. He wore a flannel shirt. So you immediately get that preconception until you find out he owned 80 movie theaters and restaurants in North and South Carolina. And he was a multimillionaire. And he was known as the Sam Walton of Charlotte. But on December 23rd, 1984, he gave me a great gift. He asked me if he could mentor me. And I said, yes. For 14 years, I would go to him and he would teach me these lessons. So in 1997, right before he passed away, he invited me over to his house and he went over to his desk, opened his drawers up and brought these handwritten notes over, sat down next to me. He said, I want to give this to you. I said, what is it? He goes, this is what I've been teaching you. He said, these are the handwritten notes I took in 1929 when my mentor sat down with me. This is about how to be successful in business. I want to give this to you, but you got to promise me something. Don't let it die with you. And for 20 years, I put them in a journal. I didn't look at them. What an idiot I am. As I'm writing my book, Moments Matter, I find these notes. And I'm like, I'm an idiot. And I talked to my current mentor, Don. He's out of Atlanta. I said, Don, I shared with him these notes. He goes, well, God doesn't give you the lesson until you're ready. You weren't ready in 1997. So I've been very blessed to have mentors starting in 1984 to having Tony starting in 1997. And then Don right now. I think it's imperative you have a mentor. Even everybody needs a mentor, someone who can level set them, give you the truth on where you're at and level set you so you can take yourself to a different level. That's how it happened, Amy.
Thank
Can I
you.
ask a question related?
Please.
It's kind of it's great to see where you've gone from corporate to giving back and everything, but I think about this a lot myself because many of us have had retail jobs or food service jobs when we were in our younger, more scrappier years trying to get things together. I feel like those people skills go a long way, but you don't realize it at the time. Would you agree and share your experiences on that if you wouldn't mind?
Oh, I totally agree. I think one of the blessings I had, especially when I was in restaurants, right? You have to get along with a lot of different kind of people. And, and that's why I'm challenged with some of these things going on in the world right now, because I never saw the differences between racial people and black and white and gay and lesbian. Because I was around it the entire time. And I always related to people. So I think Chuck, you're spot on, because I think people who are in those environments, whether the bars, restaurants, starting to scratch, those people skills, you open yourself up, you can calculate the benefit of them later on if you become less judgmental. And that's the thing that I start shifting is stop judging people because I don't know their backstories. And that's the moment everything starts shifting for me and help me grow in my business career.
Thank you.
You're awesome. So I have
Anybody
a
else?
question. What did it feel like to get back on a plane to go home after the accident?
Well, the next day I got back on the plane. I didn't get to that part of the story. But you know what? The next day on January 16th, I was being told what to do, right? I was just being shuffled. But here's what happened. So then I got back and my company, my manager asked me to fly to Michigan the next week. Now, my vice president told me I didn't have to do it, but 2009 is a tough year, and you're sales, right? You don't want to give up that sale. So I flew to Michigan. Now I flew on Delta. Now there's nothing wrong with Delta. I love Delta, but I was a rock star on US Airways, right? Everybody knew me, right? I was getting everything. Delta, I was the guy in the back row. No one knew me from Adam. So I was a little shaky. I had to be a little shaky until somebody recognized me because I was on every TV show in the world, right? Yeah. I saw every 5 minutes, you saw somebody different. So the captain found out. He came back and sat with me. We talked a little bit through it, but that was the shakiest flight that I've ever had. Because man, I'm by myself on a plane when no one knows me, going to Michigan. My company doesn't care about me because they're putting me out here. They shouldn't even put me out here, but that calmed me down and just got back in the plane and went. I think I had to do that though. You have to get back on the horse. I know a lot of people on that plane still haven't flown since. And I think that's a problem. That's a challenge for them.
Great. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? Well, thank you, Dave. This has been great. I think we all got a lot out of it. And the recording will be made available to everyone that registered for the event. Another question.
Okay.
Can you share your personal view on why decisiveness is important when faced with an emergency and how you share this with others?
Yeah, thank you. I think that was Roman. Thank you, Roman.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest gifts my parents gave me, and I have failed at this as a parent, is that they made me at a young age make decisions and have consequences for decisions. And it started even at the dinner table. when I wasn't going to eat something, and my dad said, fine, you made a decision, you go to bed, right? And I was learned very early in life how to make decisions. So when it came time to make a decision, I've learned in life, sometimes I focus on my values and doing the right thing. And more times than not, if I'm 51% right, I'm have a pretty good result. So I believe one of the challenges we have now as parents, especially in this world, is we don't make our kids make decisions early enough in life and understand how to make a decision, because like we're finding right now, this traumatic life experience we're calling COVID and all the racial distress we're having, people are afraid to make decisions because they're afraid to make the wrong decision or say something. You got to be able to make a decision and stick with it and live with the consequences. I think that was the greatest gift my parents gave me, because if I hadn't had that, I may not be able to make decisions on the plane that day to be able to do what I needed to do. Thank you, Roman.
Great. All right. One last call for questions.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Well,
My new
thank
book-
you, Dave. This was great. We
Yep.
all got a lot out of it. So, and lots of good thinking to take back with us over the holidays and getting ready for the new year. So really appreciate it. Thank you everyone for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. If I could help you, just check me out on LinkedIn, and my new book's called God Gives You the Lesson When You Are Ready. I'd love for you to check it out, and part of the proceeds go back to Alzheimer's Association this time. So thank you very much. Thank you,
Right.
Nina.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.